Welcome back to another podcast of Heal Without Harm. My name is Dr. Clayton Dir, also known as the Doc Dir. I am a physical therapist, and I am here to bring you a little bit more knowledge and ability to self-advocate with the information that we will talk about on today's podcast, along with any of my others. Today, we have a coach or a sports performance coach specifically. He is CSCS certified, owner of NPWR Training. His name is David Akao. Welcome, and thank you for coming on.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Dude, I am really excited. I was thinking on the drive here that along the way, I've met multiple different trainers, coaches, gym owners, and some people just have it. I don't even feel like I'm experienced enough to be like, oh no, you have what it takes necessarily, right? Like I haven't been around long enough.
Yeah.
But I do remember when I met Alan, the owner here at Compelled, when I met Maddie before she like really started anything major, I was like, we got to stick with this girl because she's going to go places.
Absolutely.
And I remember when I started seeing your stuff, your marketing, your guerrilla marketing is what I would call it. And then when I met you, I think right as you kind of joined Amplify Training, we went and ate Chick-fil-A, and I was like, this dude's going to do something.
That's right, yeah.
And so it's fun to see you actually continue doing it. I am actually like a little cheerleader for you on the socials because you're always putting out good information. And so if you guys haven't, please go follow David Akao and NPWR Training on the socials. But we'll give you those handles kind of here towards the end. David is also CSCS certified. Let's go ahead and start there. What is CSCS certified and what does that mean?
Yeah, so CSCS it's called the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. So this isn't your typical personal training certification. This is like if you really want to work with high level athletes, you got to have the CSCS. And if you want to be a college strength coach, which actually I'm actually fortunate enough to actually be a strength and conditioning coach at Newman University right now. Like those universities do require a CSCS for you to even be in the door coaching college athletes in the weight room. And even if you want to go, Olympic sports coaching, Team USA basketball, you got to have that CSCS. And so it's a pretty tough test. It was 2 sections. We had a scientific section where you had to know your anatomy, stuff like that. And then you had a practical section, which was knowing how to teach a squat, knowing how to program for athletes, stuff like that. So it got like a 60% pass rate.
That's not that much.
No. And I actually did fail half of it my first time and then got it on my second try. Okay. So I try not to talk too much about certifications, but I do think the CSCS is kind of a gold standard certification when it comes to strength conditioning.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And what I've learned is sometimes people who have the least amount of certifications, but the most amount of experience are the best people to go to. Absolutely. And then sometimes people with 14 letters behind their name don't know anything. They're just a book nerd, which I don't mean that rudely when I say book nerd, but they know everything technically, but don't know anything practically.
Yeah, totally agree.
Can they implement it? Right?
Absolutely.
And so I definitely resonate with you there. So let's go back. I want to say the people listening who this specific podcast could be really good for is potential coaches and trainers learning a little bit more about your path and how you got where you are. Because I think people want to be where you are potentially as like an owner of your own business, but they don't realize like, They see you now and they see you as an overnight success. Like, oh, he's got it figured out. It's like,
absolutely.
No, we'll go through your path. About,
absolutely.
Kind of where you started and how you got where you are. But the other thing too is just to demonstrate to people how qualified you are to coach either them or their kids. Because I know youth is one spot that you really excel. Youth being what I've seen at least on socials. Early teens, 10-year-old, all the way up to like high level college athletes. And so I want to kind of paint that spectrum well. So someone who's listening now could be like, no, David Akao, NPWR Training, that's who I need to go kind of work with. And then we'll talk a little bit about if you've had any sort of injuries and your experience with the medical system and how we can help more people navigate that. So coming on down, I remember seeing some funny videos of you on the YMCA 360 app. So is that where you started when it comes to like your training career? And then walk me down, where did you go from there until we got to NPWR?
Yeah, so it's been quite the journey. I really took it one step at a time. So if I'm really being honest, the very first experience I had in strength conditioning, I was actually an intern at Newman University when I was in my undergraduate at Friends University. I interned with the strength coach there, and that was a really good learning experience. Like I really feel like I kind of started from ground zero. Like I was a college athlete, but I really didn't know too much about college strength conditioning. I was kind of a old school squat, bench, deadlift kind of guy, but I learned a lot more about just actually how to move, single leg training, specialty bars, because thing about strength conditioning is the field's always advancing. So your old school squat, bench, deadlift, that may not be the best way to see results these days. And so, yeah, I was interned at Newman for about 11 months, I believe. And then I took a job at the YMCA part-time. So I remember I was still in my undergraduate at Friends. I was also playing football at Friends. So sometimes I would literally, work at 6 a.m. at the YMCA for 3 or 4 hours. Then I'd go to class. Then I would go to practice. And then sometimes I would go back to the Y to train clients in the evenings. And I think when I went into the YMCA, I knew it wasn't going to be a long-term career for me, but I was just super excited to get my feet wet. And I just fell in love with the process of getting better as a trainer, because I think, again, as a trainer, I believe I started from ground zero. I was not super confident with sales. My programming wasn't the best, but I just loved getting better. I loved being at the gym, meeting new people, and just really truly felt like I was making an impact on people's lives. And through my time there, I was there 2.5 years. I actually, by the time I left the Y, I was one of the top producing trainers. Built a clientele. I did pretty much everything you could think of there. I was teaching boot camps. I taught those Y360 videos that you probably saw. And then from there, I went to a kind of a private studio called Amplify.
Can we pause real quick? We'll come right back to the Amplify.
Yeah.
I think 2.5 years is not a short time.
No,
At least I wouldn't say.
No,
at the YMCA, and part of that was even through COVID. Is that correct?
That was, yes, correct.
Okay. Yep. So there's a lot of adaptability and just needing to acknowledge that you need to gain experience. I think some people when they finish the CSCS exam or they finish the personal training test, they want to come out and immediately start what you are doing now.
Mm-hmm.
But you had to build a lot of experience beforehand, whether it be in sales, right? Because if you can't convince the person in front of you to either pay or come in, then you're not going to get them results.
Yeah.
But talk me through real quick, just at the YMCA, like you went in probably wanting to train athletes.
I did. Yes, I did. Yep.
But you just mentioned you did a lot of other stuff. And
Absolutely.
So training athletes was your goal. What other things were you actually kind of like either being willing to or almost forced to kind of branch into? Like you said something about classes and videos.
Absolutely. That's a great question. So, I actually recommend, I usually think training at a big box gym like the YMCA or Planet Fitness, I actually think that's a very positive thing for new trainers to do. Just especially because a lot of times, I don't think trainers truly know what they're getting into. This industry is a grind. There's the saying, 90% of trainers quit in their first year. And so I think sometimes I tell people, the nice thing about the YMCA and Planet Fitness is you typically don't have to have a bigger certification like a CSCS to get in the door. They usually have their own online certifications that are pretty easy to pass. And so sometimes I think that's kind of a good thing for them to start off there and then see if they actually want to, make training a career. And then, if they do feel that way, then they can go get a bigger certification as opposed to spending the money first and then, hating it. And then they just wasted,
Well, they can also go get the reps on someone else's dollar.
Absolutely.
Right. Because if I'm correct, do you at least make minimum wage when you're doing those?
See, so there's a fitness floor associate where you make, I think it's $12 an hour.
Okay.
Which actually isn't too bad, especially for a college student.
Yeah.
And what I would do a lot of times is I would find people on the floor and run them through demos and, just doing it completely for free, but yet I'm still getting paid by the Y and I'm getting repetitions at coaching people.
For sure.
And so, I got so many reps at coaching people. I trained mainly, I would say 80% general pop.
Okay.
There, I was training moms, dads. I remember I even had a gentleman in a wheelchair I trained. And I think it's great to even if you want to train athletes long term, I do think it's great to get experience training the general pop because you just build a lot of soft skills. You build a lot of really cool relationships with general pop. Those moms, dads, they're usually pretty successful people that can afford to pay for personal training. And I kind of joke it's kind of a great way to get free mentorship and free life advice from those successful people.
So many things I want to touch on. So first one is I do agree with you on the general population because what I've witnessed is when I work with, that high school athlete that just won state in baseball, he's very easy to coach. You're like, hey, come on, push a little bit more through your glute. And that's all you have to say.
Yeah.
You have the 40-year-old female who's never worked out and you say, hey, come on, fire your glute, they're going to have no idea what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you really start to learn how to either use your hands. So for me, like tactile feedback, tap the quad, push here, do whatever, or just getting better with your words.
Yeah.
I'm witnessing now in Jake, my student, the amount that I've grown in my 4 to 5 years of being a PT, where he'll say a ton of words trying to get somebody to do something, and I'm like, and then I'll step in and be like, hey, just do this, and then it clicks.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to make myself sound good. It's like, wow, I've come a long way.
Absolutely.
And so it's actually a lot harder to work with the general population because they're probably less body aware. So you have to be a lot better at your coaching skills.
Yeah.
And then you can carry that back over to your general athlete.
Yeah, I agree.
Would you agree? Yeah,
no,
that
totally
experience.
Agree.
And then the other thing too that you mentioned, what was it? You mentioned coaching the different people, getting the reps in. I don't remember what was next. Let's move on to after you did those 2.5 years, got all the reps in, put in kind of probably close to like the 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Then you moved on to that private studio. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I moved on to a private studio called Amplify. It was kind of a startup business. It was a little bit more, we more so kind of tried to target towards sports performance training and athletes. And I did still train my fair share of general pop there.
Okay.
But I was the head trainer was my title there. And did a lot of training. The way I kind of viewed it, I was, I didn't get the guaranteed hours that I got at the YMCA with, getting paid on the fitness floor. And so I really kind of had that mentality, like I was running my own business inside of Amplify, even though it wasn't really the case. I was still underneath their brand. I really that's when I learned to grind a little bit harder, network harder. That's when I think I got better at sales and talking to parents. And slowly but surely, I built up a pretty decent clientele there. I did get better, more so start working with athletes. We got a lot of club volleyball there, got a lot of high school baseball there. And I loved it. But the only thing about it was, I felt like I really did feel like I was running my own business, but I truly wasn't, I wasn't getting paid the way I wanted to. There were things I would have maybe structured differently that I didn't have the freedom to. And so that's kind of what led me to starting NPWR.
Tell me about that process, moving, almost feeling comfortable and confident enough to part ways with Amplify and then build your own. Like, did you have to get frustrated to a certain point? Did you have to feel like you had enough money in the bank? Did you have to feel like you had enough clientele to go market to? Like, what was the threshold where you're like, you know what, I'm doing it. I can do this thing on my own. Yeah,
absolutely. So I throughout my 5 years as a trainer, I'm pretty familiar with most gyms, and it's really hard these days, because you're either a W-2 employee underneath somebody's brand and getting paid, maybe $20-$25 an hour for training, which that sounds good, but that's only for training typically. So logistically, you have to do the math. Like, you got to train like 40 hours at, $20 an hour, and you're making, maybe 40K doing that.
But if someone's not there,
then
so
you're
someone cancels, you're not making the money.
You're not making that money. And so it sounds better than what it actually is. And so I truly felt in my mind, like, long term, if I really wanted to make a long, sustainable career as a trainer, I was going to have to do my own thing. And I was at the point, I was like 23 years old, which was pretty young, and I didn't have any responsibilities. I don't have any kids. And so I kind of thought to myself, like, this is my chance to go build my own thing. If I fail, like, so what? I remember I told myself, like, I was going to give it a year. I was going to give everything I had. And if it didn't grow, I would reevaluate. And I think it's been one of the best decisions of my life.
For sure. How many years old is NPWR now?
It is a year and a half now. So I started my own LLC, I believe it was July of 2023. So we're about a year and a half now.
For sure. So how much have you grown since? You said if you didn't grow a certain amount, like, what are you at?
It's been crazy. I'm a big analytics guy. Like, I love looking at data. And so I actually did the math on how much my revenue grew from my first 6 months in business to my second 6 months in business. And we grew, I believe it was 108%. So we over doubled. Yeah.
Yeah. At this rate, man, you'll be a billionaire in like 7 years.
Oh man, that's the goal.
Okay, so I know everything in business generally comes back to dollars, but how else would you measure growth?
Yeah, it's for me, it's the amount of lives impacted.
Okay.
So
Do you keep track of that number?
kind of, I mean, it's
I know
hard.
it's hard.
I do have a spreadsheet of clients, but like, no, it's really cool because another thing I consider successful about NPWR is I've partnered with Newman University to be an assistant athletic performance coach. And really, if you do the numbers, I train 4 teams there every week. And that's over 100 athletes that we get to impact through Newman University. And then I have a partnership with the Phoenix that, we're working with, people going through recovery of, addiction, stuff like that. And that's, again, another 10 or so lives that we get to impact every week. And then I started running youth sport camps seasonally, maybe every 2 months or so. And we, like our last youth football camp, we had 50 youth athletes. And, that was 50 youth athletes that believe we made a positive impact on. And so not only do I measure success in dollars, I mean, I do think money is important. Like you've got to make money to make a living and stay in business, but also the amount of lives impact. And I think it's really cool because those numbers typically go hand in hand. Like the more lives you impact, usually the more money you make.
Yeah. I would like to go down this youth sports avenue because I've got, at any given time, probably 3 or 4 youth athletes on my schedule. And the common theme that I see, that I think a lot of people are coming around to, is these athletes work all the time. And it seems that they specialize at the age of 10. And so I have some athletes, whether they're playing volleyball, softball, baseball, basketball, pick your sport, 12 months out of the year.
Yeah.
And for me, it's frustrating because you have all these different coaches saying like, oh, we need to do this, we need to do this. And then we have trainers and like the more weightlifting coaches saying, you need to do this, you need to do this. And then you have parents who are trying to almost live their life through their kid. And I don't think we could even blame any one person. Not that I'm trying to put blame on, but it's like everybody is doing a little bit. And what I struggled to see is, what do we do about this? Because I feel like it's going to keep happening. And some of the pain that they'll show up with in my clinic, in a way, doesn't make sense. But what it boils down to is almost overtraining.
Yeah, absolutely.
So since you're starting to but since your specialty is more within the youth, I'm curious, do you see a problem? What do you feel like is the problem, and potentially how would you try to solve it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think number one is like just educating athletes, the parents, and the coaches, because it can come from all 3 of the beliefs. I think with athletes, I think they believe they gotta do more. They gotta, do bodybuilding workouts that they see on TikTok to try and gain weight. And then because I mean, like you said, the reality is sometimes athletes have a weights class during school, then they have practice after school, and then sometimes they'll do private training on their own. Sometimes they have pitching lessons. Sometimes they'll just do their own thing at, the YMCA. And like, that's a lot of stress on the body. And I think that's what leads to overtraining. And then that often leads to injuries. So it's kind of educating the athletes, like trying to meet them where they're at. And then with parents, like you said, it's really tough because there are parents that are kind of trying to live their athletic career through their kids. And so, same thing, educating the parents. And then same thing with the coaches. Like, oh man, like one of the toughest things, even at the college level, I've been saying is like just the crazy amounts of conditioning they do at practice. Like, you got a volleyball team that's more of an ATP sport, and you got them running crazy laps around the track, which again leads to, overuse of the muscles, and then can lead to injuries.
Even like stress fractures or compartment syndrome, like some crazy stuff.
Absolutely.
Real quick, what do you mean? What is an ATP sport?
So just like a fast twitch muscle fiber. So like, football is another example. Like typically a play is only lasting 5 to 10 seconds. So, you want to train fast sprints or sled pushes as opposed to making them do gassers down and back.
Yeah. So I'm curious on that, and then we'll come back to like the youth sports aspect. But in something like that, what kind of training would they want to do? More like, I don't know, like sprints, but do like a ton of them to where it's like hard, recover, repeat?
Yeah, no, I think you really want to try to make it as sports specific as possible. So yeah, a great example is you run a 5 to 10 second sprint, and then I believe you typically have like 15 to 30 seconds in between plays, typically when you're getting into the huddle and then getting reset on the line. So it's like sprint 10 seconds all out, rest 15 seconds, do another sprint, 10 seconds, do maybe 4 to 8 sprints because, you get 4 downs, or if you get a first down, then you got eight set of downs. But really trying to keep the demands of the sport in mind when doing conditioning, because again, I think a lot of times we see just random, just running laps around the track, doing more so like long distance training and what we'd call slow twitch sport. So
so what I see with these youth athletes, and this is where if anything we're just having a discussion, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong, but when I try to critically think and go through, I feel like the youth athletes is similar to the medical system in the sense of everybody has their specialty, but nobody really reviews the whole thing. So for example, when you go to your doctor with, chest pain, they may send you to a cardiologist to make sure that, heart's doing good. But does the cardiologist also talk about nutrition, sleep, recovery, and those things? Does the doctor look at all of those things? Or does the cardiologist just look at the heart and not look at anything else?
Yeah.
So you have this very siloed type thing. What I witness from a general perspective is a lot of the times coaches, trainers, parents, the coach that's at the school, the coach that's at the team, the specialist that's the pitching coach, they're all focused on just their thing, and they say you need to do more of this.
Absolutely.
So then when you think about the athlete's perspective, they have all these pressures coming from their parent, their pitching coach, their coach like yourself potentially, the coach at the school, the weight coach at the school. So now they have 5 different pressures, and they're like, who do I please?
Absolutely.
And that's where I think we need to, in my thoughts, is like, how do we educate? I think the parents would have to really advocate for their kid and empower the kid to advocate for themselves. Of like, let's review your Sunday through Saturday. Because I've done that with kids, and I was like, when's the last time you took a break? Or when's the last time you had an off day? And they're like, I think it was 2016. I was sick, so I had to take 2 days off.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I don't know where to go in regards of like changing that, but I think we need to do like these almost just like a 7-day review every now and then.
Absolutely.
And say, what does your week look like? When are your off days? So that your body can truly recover.
No, I completely agree. And I think also collaborating is a good, if I know a softball athlete is working with a specific hitting coach, I like to kind of collaborate with them and say, hey, how was their workout today? It's also beneficial. I mean, at the college setting, it's great to collaborate with the sport coach and like, hey, how hard was practice today? Maybe we can tone it down a little bit in the weight room, or maybe they had an easier practice so we can go a little bit harder. I think it's a little bit harder in the private sector when you work with high school athletes and high school coaches, because unfortunately, sometimes I think they view you as competition, like you're trying to steal their athlete from them. But I think just coming at the perspective like, hey, I'm trying to help your athlete get better and make sure they're not overtraining. I think that's a really good angle to take.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. When you are seeing clients, I'm curious, what would you consider a success with a client?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think people would probably think, they're gaining 10 pounds, or their vertical jumps going 3 inches, stuff like that. And like, don't get me wrong, that is a huge success. But for me, it's about, number one, it's about meeting the athlete where they're at. Like, what are their goals? Like, do they want to play football in college? Or, I get a lot of parents that they'll just tell me like their kids need more self-confidence. So I think it might look different from athlete to athlete depending on what their goals are. But like for me personally, it's like, I try to think beyond the weight room. So I posted a story the other day of a kid that I trained, the very first athlete I ever trained. I trained him his senior football season. He was like 130 pounds. He bulked up about 15 pounds. He got stronger, all those great things we want to see. But what meant the most to me is he just became more confident in life. The very first session, he barely said a word to me. And then now still to this day, we talk almost every week. He lists me as a job reference. And to me, that's what I would consider a success. It's building lifelong relationships. It's helping athletes become more confident in life. It's teaching them life lessons that they can use that's going to help them become successful as a human being. Like, it's kind of those intangibles. Like, we can't really measure that, but that's what I really truly consider a success.
And what it sounds like to me, it's also what like fills your heart's
Oh,
cup,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
You know, that's the reason you kind of like show up and work with these people.
absolutely.
It's it's like the intangible. It's like weightlifting is the avenue
Hmm.
to create the confidence and relationships
Absolutely.
and all
Oh,
that kind of thing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That really is.
So who is your ideal client? Because you talked about Gen Pop, and then we've talked about youth athletes. Like, who's like some of your favorite people to work with? And what I found is I have numerous, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I love this category, and this category.
Yeah.
So who are your ideal people?
Yeah, that's a great question because I do have a pretty diverse clientele. I would say probably about 80% of my clientele right now is athletes, like somebody that plays a sport and is trying to increase their performance for that sport. And I find that I really resonate with the underdogs, you know, the kids, like I said, the kids that lack self-confidence. Again, just some examples I have of, you know, I had a girl that got cut from her volleyball team, and, you know, she was considering calling it quits, and then she came in for training, and that kind of reignited the fire inside of her to keep going. I had just some more extreme stories. Like I had a young 8-year-old kid I trained that had autism, and so kind of a maybe a little bit of an obstacle that he faces, but again, just working with him and helping him get better. So just kids that have kind of their back against the wall or haven't always had things easy in their life. I love working with those kids and mentoring them and guiding them to help them get to where they want to be. And then the biggest thing is, like, I love working with athletes that truly want to get better. Like, I feel like you have to want it. Athletes need to want it themselves. You know, it can be rough sometimes working with an athlete that's just being forced to come by their parent or their coach. But athletes that actually truly are bought in and coachable, like, those are the most fun to work with. So
A couple of things you touched on in there that I noticed back to the YMCA. You said you worked with a gentleman in a wheelchair, and you just mentioned the kid with autism. So
yeah.
these people who have mixed abilities or different abilities, I feel like that could be very daunting to a trainer
Oh,
or a
absolutely.
coach.
Yeah.
So what are some lessons that you've learned to treat them as just a normal person and
Yeah.
coach them as a normal person? Like, what are some obstacles that you've ran into, and how have you navigated those?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think it's just you kind of almost have to forget about their their obstacles. Like the gentleman that was in the wheelchair, you know, I still talk to him like a normal human being. And yeah, I mean, it really is meeting them where they're at. Like I have another kid that's a great story. Is his name's Zach. He was diagnosed with leukemia, and I trained him starting at the YMCA, and then they ended up following me to when I started NPWR. And I still train this kid every week. He has overcome cancer, but he still is dealing with some side effects. And so, you know, for him, it's just getting him moving. Like, there's been times he's literally just wanted to come in and run. He trains with his dad, and they'll just run routes, and we'll throw the football to him. And like, I think that's great because, again, like, he's not really getting much activity outside the gym. So the biggest thing I think is just, yeah, not even just with these clients that have challenges, but for anybody, it's just helping them fall in love with the process and making training fun for them that makes them want to continue to come back. Because I think if people are dreading coming to training, like, you're probably not going to have them as a client long term.
I think for me, when looking at physical therapy or coaching and training and weightlifting, when you look at it through the person you're working with's perspective, so we'll say like the client's perspective, when you consider the rest of their life,
Oh yeah,
sometimes I feel like you're a personal trainer. Why are you just playing catch with them?
Yeah,
You know, it's
absolutely.
very easy from like the coach or trainer, like
Oh,
you feel
man.
like it needs to be transactional. Like I need to give
Absolutely.
them blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
But then you remember like, no, that's worth it to them. Like
Yeah.
that's what they want to do. That's what they're missing in their life, and that's what they're paying you for. From a
absolutely.
business perspective, it doesn't always have to be like, nope, we have to get
Yeah.
these lifts in, and I need to make sure you improve in this much. Like there's so many intangible benefits that I have to consistently remind myself, like, no, we are just going to walk them through a workout today, and that's not just a workout. It's so much more.
Yeah, no, you nailed that. Yeah, two things I'll add to that. So number one is, like, yeah, it's pretty cool. I get asked to do a lot of like trainer education workshops these days, and I always joke, like, I always start it off my slideshows as I say, you know, I'm not the best trainer, and I give reasons why. And I say one of the reasons is, you know, I played spike ball with athletes, you know, during the entire session, or I brought athletes McChickens to workouts. I've bribed them with McChickens. I've had dance battles during workouts, you know, and so I like to think I know what I'm doing as a trainer. Like I have a CSCS, but it's okay to not always follow what the textbook teaches us. And then, second thing is, like you said, I truly believe, I have a lot of parents that pay me a lot of money to train their kids, but I truly believe like a lot of these parents are just paying for me to be that extra person in their child's life that cares about them and that pours into them and cares about them.
Yeah, I think, and like you said, that's unmeasurable. But when we think about what's the outcome we're looking for, it is like better performance, no doubt, right? That's why they're there in the first place. But I think when you're in the middle of doing something different, you question whether or not it's right.
Yeah.
But when you start getting the outcomes and you get more referrals to you and you see your athletes on the field performing just as good, if not better than others, especially when they were initially cut.
Yeah.
That's the change we're really looking for. And
absolutely.
So when you do something different, like, no, we played spike ball the whole time.
Yeah.
Right. Or which honestly, if I wanted to be a PT nerd, we could talk about all the different things that you're actually giving them in there, right?
Absolutely.
In regards of like brain stimulation and all that kind of stuff. Like there's a lot coming from it.
Yeah.
But when you talk about dance battles or even bribing with McChickens, like you're getting rapport built, you're getting buy-in.
Absolutely.
And then what that ends up doing, because I have much different but still similar outcome experiences with clients, is now you're starting to like drop barriers to where now these kids are saying things to you they wouldn't have said before. They're talking more than they would have before. And then, it's visit 24.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know what, Dave, like I'm just struggling at school because of blah, 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 blah. And you're like, wow, we would have never got there if I didn't like slowly build rapport, buy the McChickens, fill in the examples. And so now this kid is opening up more to you, to their friends, to their parents, whatever it may be. And so look at all these other things you're giving them that if you were by the textbook, like, nope, do this, rest, and like a robot, like they want to be there.
Yeah. And I think that's what keeps me going, year number 5 is I hate feeling like I'm going through the motions. Like, so I also like to make sure I'm having fun as a trainer, the athletes having fun. And then, like you said, one of my favorite parts about being a trainer is it's not just the sets and reps, it's the conversations that we have in between sets. I'm a big foodie, so pretty much I always talk about, food hot takes and our favorite foods during sessions, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. On a random note, favorite place to eat in town?
Man, that's tough.
It could be a chain.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be anything crazy.
I love Red Robin, a good burger.
Really?
Burger, yeah. Royal Red Robin, burger with bacon, egg.
Oh, the breakfast one.
Oh yeah, pretty good. Yeah. And then I love their fries. So
I do. I have such a love-hate relationship with their whole like chips and salsa, but they have fries and sauce.
Oh wow.
I mean, they have unlimited fries, right?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
God, it's horrible. I love it. They're so good. And I'm just sitting here plowing fries, and I swear fries take up way more room in my stomach than chips do. It's fantastically horrible. Okay, moving it a little bit more into somebody who could be listening that's not weightlifting and they're like, oh, I don't even want to listen to this podcast because it's just going to remind me of what I'm not doing. If they're sedentary or they're dealing with pain or they don't really know where to start or they've tried and failed, what do you see as that first step for them to take on their own, in their own house, going to a gym, coming to you? Like, where does that person start? Because it can be quite daunting in that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say the hardest part is just getting started. The heaviest weight at the gym is the door. And so I think it's just, finding something that they love that's going to get them moving. And so, I don't discriminate against exercise. I remember I was talking with Alan about this, is like, there really is no such thing as the best program. The best program is probably the one that you're going to do consistently and that you're going to be bought into. So we have so many, fitness options around town. Like if they want to do CrossFit and that gets them moving, like that's great. If they want to do Orange Theory, that's great. Like, or if they just want to do bodybuilding or powerlifting, I think they got to find some type of exercise that they enjoy doing consistently. I think is the biggest thing.
Athletes and club teams, load up your gear with Van Gogh Transport Services. Led by local Ironman triathletes, Van Gogh safely ships your bikes, team equipment, or even bulky luggage to out-of-town events. Focus on performance, not logistics. Explore more at vangohtransport.biz. This episode of Heal Without Harm is brought to you by Compelled Fitness, your ultimate partner in Wichita for getting into the best shape of your life. Whether you're aiming for better health, reaching athletic goals, or simply improving your fitness, Compelled Fitness offers programs and services tailored to fit your needs. Don't settle for less than your best. Visit compelled-fitness.com today and start your transformation with expert guidance and personalized fitness. At Compelled Fitness, the goal is helping you become the best version of yourself. I see that a lot, even in my own brain, where I think there's a lot of shoulds that we live by in life. You, me, and all these people that we're discussing in regards of like, how do we get started? It's like, what should I do? It's like something, like literally just something.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when clients will come in, they're not on a training program of any sort and they have pain. Usually by visit 3 or 4, I'm like, okay, what can we do to like sustain this? Like, what makes you happy?
Yeah.
And it almost throws them off. They're like, well, aren't I supposed to be in the gym on a cardio equipment? And it's like, no. I mean, you can if you want, but you can also do all these other things. And so I'll start asking him, like, do you want to train once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week? Do you want to go to a class? Do you want to go to a trainer? Do you want to go to a small group? Like, do you want to be with like 2 other buddies? Do you want to do more like a jujitsu kind of thing?
Yeah.
Do you want to lift weights? Do you want to run? Do you want to go and do Pilates? Like, what sounds fun to you? And it really takes him a second to think, to try to gain some clarity on like, if I imagine myself going somewhere multiple times a week, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Do you want bigger muscles, prettier muscles? Do you want to lose fat? Do you want to just lift heavy weights and not really care how you look? Like, what sounds interesting to you? And let's build that. And I think they're not used to that because they're either, the classic middle-aged female perspective of, I'm supposed to Jane Fonda my way to, like slimmer thighs and like a flatter stomach, or it's the guy that's like, I just got to lift a ton of weights and look like Ronnie Coleman.
Yeah.
Like there's like, that's like less than 0.5% of the different options out there.
Yeah,
So
totally agree.
Moving on again, have you ever had physical therapy yourself or have people you worked with been through physical therapy? What's your experience there?
I've actually never had physical therapy myself, but I've been pretty blessed. Like, I know you've sent me a client that's gone through physical therapy. Dr. Allison sent me a client that's gone through physical therapy. Had a high school baseball player that I'm working with currently that he was working with NovaCare in Derby.
Okay.
So I haven't personally had experience with it, but I know a handful of my clients have.
What's your perspective? Like if someone said, I don't even know how to ask this question, but what's your perspective on physical therapy? If someone said, hey, Dave, what is physical therapy? And you had to be the one to answer. I'm really curious. Like, what's a non-PT's perspective?
Yeah,
right?
that's
like, I'm heavily biased.
That's a tough one, and I hope I don't butcher this.
You will offend no one.
But to me, a physical therapy, I believe the way, and I've talked with you about this, I've also talked with chiropractors about that. Like, what's the difference between a chiropractor and a physical therapist? A physical therapist, I would say, is somebody that helps like rehab the muscle long term, like. So, you might do dry needling, you might do scraping, you might get them some movements in the weight room to help, rehab that muscle and help them recover from injury. That's probably what I would say. And that's why the way I try to think about it is a physical therapist is more like muscle based, whereas a chiropractor is probably a little bit more joint based. But no, I always tell people like physical therapists are like some of the smartest people like you'll ever meet. Because you are a doctor, you're a doctor of physical therapy. And so, if an athlete has an injury that like, I don't really know, what's the cause of it or how to help them, I will refer them out to, somebody like you.
So in that note, I'm curious because what I see with trainers sometimes is, this is my perspective. Like I said, I'm biased because, my brain always says, find the problem, go fix it, find the problem, go fix it. And so, at what point in time, let me rephrase and back up. So trainers I've observed will work with clients with pain, which is good, right? Because they really know how to navigate around it. Let's substitute, let's do less, let's avoid that body part, what have you. But if 6 months later, that person's still having that same pain, in my perspective, from my physical therapy brain bias, I would say you should refer them on or say like, hey, you should probably get that checked out.
Yeah.
I can totally see how some people are like, I'm fine, I'll deal with it. Okay, that's another story.
Yeah.
But at what point in time do you draw the line and say, hey, I would really like you to go get this checked out? Is there a line in the sand, or is it kind of just contextual on each client?
Yeah, I think it is. I do think it is contextual on each client. I haven't had it happen often, but I know there have been a few athletes I can think of. I think the one I think a lot is like those lingering injuries that like people just continue to try to work through, and it just continues to cause them problems. So like I think a perfect example I can think of is a shoulder injury with volleyball. Like
Mhm.
volleyball are constantly using their shoulders, you know, for spiking and hitting the volleyball. So there was one girl I tried to send you years back. I don't think it ever went through, but they just could not figure out like what the issue was with her shoulder. And so I remember I gave the mom your card,
Yeah.
and I was like, hey, I think you could really or your daughter could really benefit from
Mhm.
seeing Dr. Clayton.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And I think that's where some of the disconnect is still taking place in the medical field is we have a high prioritization as the general public of the medical doctor and then the ortho, right? Like, hey, take a picture and tell me what's wrong.
Right.
But a lot of times, especially in youth athletes, you're not going to find anything.
Yeah. And
Like they're going to be like, no, the muscles look good.
yeah.
Or they're going to find something small,
Yeah.
blame it heavily, and then like recommend a surgery.
Yeah.
To where in my experience, and maybe even you have this experience as well, when you just strengthen that joint,
Oh, absolutely.
things can get better. But if it's not, like you said, it's lingering,
Yeah.
that's when I would recommend coming on to a PT, because like our like bread and butter is evaluation, find that root cause,
Yeah.
heal it up, give you basic strengthening. Well, sometimes it's complex, but strengthening to that one part, right? So it's like if you have a chain and you have one weak link, do you want to get a whole stronger chain, or do you want to go fix the weak link? In my eyes, I want to go fix it. But then I'm going to send them right back to you and say, no, keep going, doing what you're doing, because you need to integrate what I'm teaching you into all of that.
100%. Yeah. And I think you gave it. Yeah, we have the perfect example of James, you know, who you sent, probably about 30 years old. You had told me that he went to a doctor, they recommended shoulder surgery.
Oh yeah, he was like 3 weeks away from getting it.
It is so crazy. And then, you know, now he went to you for a bit, and then you sent him to me for, you know, personal training. And it's like, yeah, he moves well. It was super
for sure. He just needs reps and more resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was I love his story, because he was like, he would work out at times. He had swam a lot, and he was a really good depiction of the average person that goes to the medical field and is recommended surgery that's ultimately unnecessary. And I always tell people, when someone comes to me and they get their pain fixed up, usually the second half of surgery, or sorry, not second half of surgery, second half of physical therapy is, cool, your pain's gone now. What do we want to do now? And usually it's improve all the weaknesses that potentially led to that injury, or it's lifestyle change. Like if I don't help you change your life through the course of a PT plan of care, I've failed you. And you could keep paying me a higher dollar amount to come work out with me, but one, I'm not going to be as good as you are. Like David, I'm not going to be as good as you are creating those workouts. Two, I mean, most people could probably only afford once a week, you know, not for an ongoing thing, but if they can come to someone like you and bring their brother with them, like he did, like, dude, 2-3 times a week, go build that relationship, go build that strength. Like,
awesome.
That's all he needed. And his shoulder, I would bet a good amount of money, his shoulder may never bother him again, just because he's stronger and more active than he used to be. That's the root cause, honestly.
Yeah, that's like, just, I think it's a perfect success story, because he's made a lot of really good progress. His brother's made a lot of good progress. His mom, who's a client of your guys, is like gifted them personal training for Christmas.
Heck yeah.
They've renewed with me 3 or 4 times, and
for sure.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And that's, again, you're also doing lifestyle change with them, where it's like, what is that going to look like over the next 6 months, over the next 6 years? If he gets married and has kids, now he can, you know, pass on a healthier lifestyle to that child.
Yeah.
It's I mean, I could go on and on and on like motivational type stuff of like what we are really offering overall. Moving into a little bit of like exercise myths. I've got 1,000 of them that I would like to debunk, but what are some of the top 2 or 3 myths that you hear on social media, see on social media, hear your clients talk about, that are just straight up false, or there's some nuance in it?
Yeah, one of the biggest ones I can probably think of is like just the belief we've always got to do more, you know, 10 sets of 10, tons of volume. I'm a big believer, and that was something I did. Like I remember when I was a high school athlete, I would go to the YMCA for like 3 hours just doing crazy workouts. And I'm a big believer in less is more. Like you can get a really good workout in just 45 minutes. And so and that's something I like to think about as a trainer. And that's something I think I've improved on over the years. Is there's a saying, like, you want to try to prescribe the minimal effective dose. So like if you can get a good strength stimulus in 3 sets as opposed to doing 6 sets, like you should go for the 3 sets. So that's probably the biggest one I like to think about, is less is more. We don't always have to do 7 days a week of, bodybuilding training, 3 days of full body is going to be perfect for a lot of athletes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I read a book a couple months back called Essentialism, and it's not the whole only worry about having a roof over your head and drink water. It's more about reviewing your life and saying how much added stuff is taking place that you really don't need. And the one motto that was repeated over and over again in each chapter that resonates a lot with what you just said is do less but better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So do less stuff, but doing less is better. So it's just a different turn on less is more. And it goes back to efficiency. Like if I cut this and this out, it's this junk volume that's going to go away. So now the only input coming in is actually very helpful.
Absolutely.
And now overtraining goes away.
Yeah, there's a great quote. It's tired is not better, better is better.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot because I think our old measurements were everybody got workouts from, Muscle and Fitness magazines, which is generally put on by Ronnie Coleman, Jay Cutler, bodybuilders, which if you want to become a bodybuilder, go do those things.
Absolutely.
But if you want to become a football player, jump higher, run faster, don't go do those things.
100%. Yeah.
That's the main thing. And so just thinking about what is the outcome you want, reverse engineer it. Because if you do what those guys say, you're going to look like what those guys look like. Well, probably not because they have some other things pharmaceutically helping them. But moving into, you've came a long way over the last 5 years. In what ways do you feel like you've personally grown as a human going through the changes in your training as you've learned, but then also going from big box gym, I don't know much, I'm just going to try to train as many people as possible, to I'm now a business owner and maybe even a little imposter syndrome of I'm telling other business owners,
oh yeah, it's
how to help their business.
100%. Yeah, it's crazy. Tomorrow I'm actually going to be on a panel with Dr. Courtney and
yes,
which I'm is crazy because those, Compelled is one of the biggest, not even one of the biggest. I think it's the biggest CrossFit gym in Kansas.
Yeah,
square footage.
It is.
And then, Dr. Courtney, he's built natural wellness from the ground up. And now you guys got 2 clinics here in Wichita, just a huge name. And I was kind of thinking to myself, I'm like, man, do I even belong on this panel?
I think they may be wondering the same thing. So
yeah,
I think you're among good company.
Yeah, absolutely. No. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. But no, I really think I was thinking about it the other day, over these past 5 years, I've just grown as a person. I'm able to meet people with where they're at. I've literally seen it all with clients. Clients in a wheelchair, overweight clients, clients with special needs. And it's just helped me grow as a person, being able to relate with them and talk with them. And I feel like that I was talking with Alan about this on my podcast is if I decided to leave training and just go sell cars or something, I feel like that's a skill that I can that will translate into being a car salesman, is just that ability to meet people where they're at and relate with them. So that's the biggest thing. And I think just being able to get out my comfort zone. I remember early on in my career at the Y, I was just so unconfident with sales. And now I actually really would consider sales to be a specialty of mine. And I think it's also just because I just believe in what I do so much more with all the stories I can tell about athlete success stories. We need, there's just more athletes to impact. And so I kind of feel like if I can't sell a client, I'm almost kind of doing them a disservice. So that's the biggest thing. And just, like I said, being able to get out my comfort zone. A cool story I can tell is I remember I did the drag show for your LLS campaign. It's man, if I could push myself to do that, I think I can almost push myself to do anything in life.
Yeah, that was a trip.
It was.
And especially just the political climate of the world, there were some potential challenges that you'd put yourself up against doing a drag show. Just with potential judgment and things like that. But man, that night we actually raised $9,700 for LLS. That was our biggest. Our biggest event by far. That's awesome. We had tons of support. That was really cool, and I do appreciate you significantly for doing that. Yeah. There was one other piece that I wanted to ask about. Let's go into the random fun questions, and I've already touched on these a little bit. So, if you had what's your favorite food or snack that you could eat nonstop? This could be anything.
I'm kind of a big back. I guess I'd say either burgers or fries. I don't know if that's kind of a meal.
Honestly, you can snack on some burgers.
But I do love donuts.
Okay, what's your favorite donut?
Lamar's has some pretty good ones.
Okay. Is there anyone in
I
particular?
like the chocolate Long John.
Okay. Gotcha. I like the old fashioned ones. Sometimes they're called like a sour cream donut. They're I don't know how to describe them. They're circular, but they look like they're old. They're super tasty. You can like feel the sugar on your tongue. It's quite intense. Anyway, favorite supplement food. Do you have a favorite shake? Do you have a favorite protein bar, protein chips? Any of those?
I think the two I can think of is Fairlife protein shakes, like we talked about.
Yeah.
The pre-made ones, the chocolate ones, those are really good. And then, of course, I'm a big energy drink guy. Celsius is probably my go-to, but I'll drink pretty much any energy drink.
Yeah, no discrimination there. We also talked about. I'm curious if anybody's tried. Comment down below on Spotify if you have the protein, like the super low calorie protein root beer floats or whatever.
Oh, yes. So yeah, I actually try to brand it as I call it the NPWR protein shake.
Heck yeah, man.
So yeah,
always be branding.
Absolutely. Yeah. So go to Quick Trip, get like a 32-ounce Diet Coke, and then get a vanilla Fairlife protein shake, pour it in the Diet Coke, and then you got yourself a protein root beer float right there.
Heck yeah, baby. What is one of your favorite stories to tell? It can be about yourself, it can be about a friend or family member, or it can be a client success story. But what's one that really
one of my
brings
favorite
joy?
stories, I would say, was just my journey as a walk-on to how I started my college football career. I had 0 offers out of high school to play football at the next level, but it was one of my biggest dreams. And so I called almost every single JUCO in Kansas to just ask for a shot to walk on. And crazy, we had about 8 JUCOs in Kansas. 7 of them either said no or just ghosted me. And I had one Coffeyville Community College that gave me a shot. Went down there, one of the smallest kids on the team. I was like 185 pounds. Redshirted my first year. I took it seriously, showed up to every single practice. I put on like 15, 20 pounds, got a lot stronger, and then went through spring ball. They offered me a scholarship after spring ball. And then I played all 12 games the next season, transferred to Friends University, played 2 years down there. I was all conference selection at linebacker both years. And then I played 2 seasons of arena football. So,
okay, I want everybody to, I think on most of the podcast formats, you can go back and hit like rewind 15, 30 seconds. He got not only no offers, he got told no 7. First of all, nobody who nowadays calls colleges saying like, hey, can I play for you? But you not only called 8 of them, but you got told no 7 times, which is quite the failure rate. And then somebody finally gave you a chance. You kept showing up. Not only did you play all 12 games, but then you transferred to a bigger college. And then what did you say you were all what?
2-time all conference.
Okay, so you have a guy who was not even given it a chance, and now you're like getting awards for how good you did.
Yeah, it's I mean, I believed in myself.
I mean, this is like the stepbrother to Michael Jordan being,
yeah.
kicked off the high school basketball team.
I guess so. So yeah,
no, that's really cool, man. And if anybody's listening and they're also wanting to play sports, like seriously, just don't give up. And if you feel like you're going to give up, call David.
Yeah, absolutely. No, seriously,
because he'll help you get there. Not only in his experience of doing it himself, but with the training and everything.
That's why I love training with those underdogs, because I can relate with those stories, because I that was once me.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you doing nowadays in or like recent times coming up? What do you have going on that if someone wants to come out and just meet you, learn from you, train with you, what are some events that you have upcoming other than tomorrow's panel?
Yeah. So I love giving like free consultations or free athlete assessments. So anybody who listens to this podcast, if you got athletes that want to come to the gym, check it out, meet me, like no strings attached, you can do that. And then I also like to kind of showcase some of the equipment. So I have a Vertec, you can get your vertical jump tested. I got these pretty cool hurdles, freestyle hurdles that can jump over, kind of challenge yourself, see how high you can jump. I have laser timers, so where you can track your sprint speed, pro agility, 10-yard dash, stuff like that. So that's no strings attached. So if anybody just wants to come in for a free athlete assessment, shoot me a message, and also follow us on social media, because we always have promos there. And then for the youth athletes, we got probably through 1st through 8th grade, those elementary school athletes. I have a youth football camp that I'm putting on March 15th at the Wichita Sports Forum. So if you could go to our website, we have more details there. And then if you shoot me a message and mention this podcast, I'll give you a $5 off discount code for the sign up link.
Perfect. So this podcast, if you're listening now, it released on March 3rd. And you said March 14th is that camp? 15th, March 15th. So you have just under 2 weeks to get signed up and go attend that. And then, like David said, reach out to him on Instagram, what is your Instagram?
So I have two. My personal Instagram is at David Akao Training. And then our NPWR Training Instagram is at NPWR Training.
And NPWR is spelled?
NPWR Training.
Perfect. And so those are some different ways you can reach out to him. And actually, he has done a couple podcasts himself, or 2 seasons of it. And so that one's called Trainer
Talks with Trainer Dave.
Yep, there you go. So go listen to him if you want to get a little bit more knowledge on him before you pull the trigger and come out and work with him. If anything, grab your kid and say, hey, we're going to go learn how to play better football. Actually, I have a nephew who loves football. What grades did you say?
1st through 8th grade.
Cool. I may sign him up for that. I think that'd be fun for him. His name is Blaze. So if you see a dude running 1,000 miles an hour, it's him. And then last thing, what's the most surprising thing that you've learned in your journey of either entrepreneurship, changing your body, going from 185 up to like 200 pounds to whatever you are now? What's something that like really just jumps out at you through that process?
Yeah, I think getting started is the hardest part. And one of my biggest mottos I like is imperfect action every single day over no action at all. I think a lot of people get so caught up in paralysis over analysis that they just don't take action. And so even with running a business, like you gotta post social media posts. Like maybe it's not the most perfect graphic or most perfect video, but posting is going to be better than not posting at all. Just getting started is the hardest part. Like I think I posted something the other day, like, and I'll talk more about it tomorrow at the business panel, but like I would argue like you should just start making money and getting leads before you even file an LLC. Like just start and be consistent, and I think you'll be really happy with the results.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm trying to grow on social media as well, and it's crazy how sometimes just quote putting something out there goes really well. I've got one TikTok now that my girls were playing downstairs, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna post this here real quick and just make it fast, and it's sitting at 20,000 views, and I'm just like, I guess that's what people like.
Yeah.
And so just keep posting. You never know when one's gonna pop off ultimately, and so just keep showing up. And so that'll be all for today's podcast. You know me, Dr. Clayton Dir, on Instagram and TikTok. I am at the Doc Dir. If you want to go check out David's stuff, he is at David Akao Training or at NPWR Training, NPWR Training on Instagram. And if you don't know where to start, I challenge you just to reach out to one of us two on Instagram or whatever source that you can find on us and just say, hey, Clayton, or hey, David, I don't know where to start. Can you please help me? I know how scary that is, but start there because both of us or either of us will take great care of you. On today's podcast, David, thank you for coming on.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Of course. And hopefully today you learned a little bit more about how to heal without harm. Thank you.